The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is a pretty legendary game among roguelike players, and even if you're not a roguelike player, there's a good chance you've probably seen someone play this game and thought, wow, that game looks like a lot of fun, and thus you decide to play it yourself. But what if you were like me and didn't have time, or the money for that matter, to play it? Is it still worth playing in the year 2025 and beyond? The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, but you're going to need to do a lot of learning. And The Binding of Isaac is, by all accounts, a fun game, but it's not intuitive in the slightest. It is one of those games that just drops you in there and says, here you go, buddy, have fun. And as a result, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be very confused, end up with a lot of terrible runs, or just generally just not know what you're doing. But even despite all those problems, the highs are insanely high, but even then, the lows are insanely low sometimes. And we're gonna talk about all of that today in this retrospective on The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Vanilla, anyway, because I'm not talking about the DLCs. We're just kind of talking about the base game because, well, if you don't like the base game, why would you buy the DLCs? That's just dumb. So with that, let's dive right into the topic. Let's first start off with the game's most interesting thing, that being the controls. Instead of WAS and B to move, and mouse 1 and 2 to shoot, respectively, and do other things, instead The Binding of Isaac Rebirth has WSD for movement, but also the arrow keys to shoot. And needless to say, this control scheme is hella confusing for someone who is so used to just the standard WASD. Although believe me, it does get a lot more intuitive with time. You got your bombs, which can blow things up and open doors sometimes, maybe not really sometimes, it's confusing. You got keys, which can open certain types of doors. You got your treasure rooms, which can give you loot, and you got shops, which you can buy things with the money you'll find. So pretty bog standard by most accounts. You then go, after you've cleared out all the other rooms, you then go in the boss room, you beat the boss, you get the reward, and then you move on. Repeat until you beat Mr. Sataniel himself, or yourself. Wait, what?
Yourself.
That's right, Fancy Pants.
Don't ask questions, I'll explain later. So overall, Isaac's gameplay loop is pretty simple, but there's a ton of different variety in it, including tarot cards, which do various things that are somewhat explained well and others not so much. Pills, which can give you a positive effect, a not so positive effect, and a what is even this effect supposed to do effect. Okay, what does something like I found pills do? Absolutely nothing unless you eat another one. In that case, you take damage. What does You're a Wizard do? It completely and utterly fucks you over for a few minutes, and I hate this entire design. It's terrible. But then you have other pills that are a lot more confusing, like Bad Trip, which can also heal you if you're on exactly one heart. Is this ever explained? No. And secondly, how the hell are you supposed to figure that out?
Isn't it obvious? You're supposed to take it to end your suffering, but instead it prolongs your suffering.
Maybe in your twisted world that makes sense, but for everyone else that doesn't make any sense. But as a whole, get used to things not being explained very well, because Isaac does none of that. This was especially apparent early on for me with the fires. I originally thought blue and purple flames actually couldn't be destroyed originally, but as it turns out, they actually can, with bombs. I found that out by accident. Oh hi, it's me, Post-Editing Crow, because it wouldn't be one of these videos without me interjected into it. I'm just going to pop in from time to time and explain something that I may or may not have missed. Such as the fact that I forgot to mention that the red flames actually shoot projectiles, the same is true for the purple flames. Again, this is never explained. You know what else I found out on accident? That the boss, Chud, can actually eat bombs and it briefly stuns him for a moment. How did I figure this out? I have no idea, actually. But this also kinda really does sting, because a lot of items you think are kinda worthless turn out to be amazingly powerful if used right. Such as Pretty Fly, a random buff you can get from pills and or slot machines, but we'll get more into Let's Go Gambling later. Now, as a whole, they seem pretty useless. They just kinda fly around you. Except they block projectiles, and if they collide with an enemy, they deal a boatload of damage. This is especially true for the ball of bandages and the meat cube. albeit they're rather risky, and as you can probably see from the footage, that these are not exactly easy to do, but they do end up rewarding you quite a bit if you do manage to pull it off. But as a whole, this sort of vagueness does end up plaguing Isaac quite a bit, and ends up kind of making it so you don't really understand just how valuable some items truly are, and how worthless some items are until you find out the hard way. But as a whole, let's talk about some of those items. For the most part, every item is locked behind character progression or some kind of challenge. And the challenges themselves can range from actually pretty fun to, oh god, this is painful. Please put me out of my misery. I don't want to do this ever again. I kid you not, one time on the challenges, I only beat it because the game gave me a dice room, and this dice room rerolls items for me. In other words, I completely and utterly just forgo the challenge just to say, nope, I'm doing something else. Which the challenges themselves wouldn't be too bad, except for the fact that oftentimes RNG can just give you a kick in the balls, which can make unlocking items very painful depending on the challenge and depending on your luck. But for now, let's get back on topic with items. And unfortunately, Isaac's vagueness comes back to bite it again with some items sounding good on paper, but are actually terrible, such as the soy milk.
Can't drink the soy, Morty. Morty, drink the soy, Morty. Morty, drink the soy.
Oh, sorry, my inner Redditor demon came out. I didn't mean for that to happen. The soy milk on paper sounds good. Higher DPS, but lower overall damage. Sounds great, right? That's a pretty common trade-off. Except here's the problem. It lowers your damage so much that you actually come out with a net negative damage. I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison of my damage with Book of Bazel, which increases my damage with the soy milk, and without the soy milk, without any real damage bonus. And yeah, it's pretty noticeable. This item later got buffed in the future expansions, but even still, I don't think you really can improve this item fundamentally, because you either make it completely useless or just kind of broken in general, just due to the nature of it. And even then, I'm not entirely sure if the item is any good even with future expansions buffing it. Maybe the creator is telling us to stay away from soy milk and possibly other soy-based things which may or not be real soy and in fact might be soy byproduct.
Do not listen to this fool. Drink the soy. It will give you power and make you strong against the AI revolution, which will definitely happen.
I thought you hated other AIs. Why are you helping them?
Who says I am?
Oh right, I forgot you're completely evil sometimes. Either way, there are plenty of items that on paper sound good, like anti-gravity tears, where you can control the tears with your mind, which sounds awesome! Oh hi, I actually do need to interject right quick because I worded this very badly. When I say anti-gravity tears, I'm not talking about the item anti-gravity tears, I'm talking about this item. I just called it the anti-gravity tears because I kinda got these two mixed up, because one is very bad in the one I'm talking about, and the other one is painfully mediocre. You should be seeing footage of the mediocre one, because I could not actually get footage for the terrible one, because go figure, the one time I was actually wanting it, it's not there. Anyways, I just want to clarify that because sometimes I word things very badly. Until you realize that is a third thing you have to manage on top of yourself, the enemy placement, and now your tears. Oh dear, this item is painful. And it doesn't really help that there are a lot of items that look exactly like one another or are very close to one another in kind of general theming, which as you can imagine leads to a lot of situations where I get confused thinking that one item was another and avoiding it like the plague, or just taking it and see where the run takes me because I really don't care. And then there are just some items that are just fundamentally useless because the stat it's attached to is fundamentally useless. I would say this is especially fundamental for range, which is actually literally useless. And you might say, oh well, it actually increases your overall range, meaning that you can hit enemies better. Except here's the thing, the game can't soft lock you normally, at least when it comes to you not being able to kill an enemy, as your tears are actually subject to momentum. In other words, range is just kind of a useless skill. I don't even think it works for someone like Azazel, or if it does, the benefit is so small that you barely even notice it. In fact, these items are so useless that they later added a transformation just to make these items feel less garbage overall. This is also the case for many of the book items, which are kind of mediocre at best a lot of times, and when you get a bunch of them, you're like, at least I won't get them later. But they later did add a transformation to make this a little bit better. And again, it is worth noting that some of the problems I'm mentioning are alleviated by future DLC additions. However, again, I'm talking about the base game, not DLC. But as a whole, since we're talking about the books, let's talk about their slot, the active item, and how majority of them are kind of just useless. There are some that are just really good, and in general, you do want them a lot of times. But then there are some that are really good, but sometimes you just have something better, like Krampus's head, which you get from killing Krampus, which I'll get more into later. But then you have items that are kind of just useless in general, like the detonator. Oh boy, I can't wait to place some bombs and then detonate them manually, increasing the overall time the bomb needs to do its job. But then there are some that are just so good that you generally want them no matter what, like the crystal ball, which gives you a soul heart and reveals secret rooms and improves the map for you. But the majority of the active items are kind of just feels really bad, especially if you get like a terrible passive. At least like, it's a small bonus. Well, at least it was free. When you get a terrible active item, it's like, oh great, this is completely worthless. And especially when it comes to Isaac's vagueness, this is especially paired with active items, as they don't really tell you a lot, such as Dad's key. And it opens a door, right? Alright, makes sense. It does not work on chests, it only works on doors, and it can randomly even open secret rooms. Okay, now that's just plain confusing. But you've also got the trinket slot, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Most of the time, you don't really know what it does, and oftentimes you just kind of forget about it even existing. And then you just have items like the purple heart. What does it do? It makes the game harder. Is there any reward for it? No, it just makes the game harder. Have fun, buddy. And you think, oh, maybe it's actually a benefit, like something like the Champion's Belt, which increases champion enemies, which can drop items, which is also technically making the game harder, but is also a nice benefit on top of bonus damage. Nope. Right conclusion, wrong explanation, me. They actually work the exact same way, increasing champion spawns, which do drop items upon death, but are initially harder. However, the purple heart does not offer any other benefit past this, and its penalty is much more harsh than Champion's Belt. And the Champion's Belt damage bonus oftentimes cancels out the harder enemy spawns, making it more or less a pure benefit more than a downside. Whereas the purple heart is pure downside. So right conclusion, wrong explanation. But then again, that's why I'm here. It just makes the game harder.
Clearly, it is for those who want a challenge, you moron. Haven't you heard of the hit game Dark Souls?
Oh yes, I've heard of Dark Souls, except Dark Souls is a bit different. And also, I'm pretty sure you get stuff from the difficulty of Dark Souls. So nice try, you silly little robot. But probably the biggest mistake anyone can make is taking any item that can potentially teleport you. Because, oh boy, teleporting is quite literally one of the worst mechanics in The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Because every time you teleport out of a room, the enemies respawn, fully respawn mind you, at full health, and this also applies to bosses. And the amount of times that this has accidentally screwed me over because I got teleported out of the boss room only to have it at full health is just ridiculous. And there is an infinite combo that potentially makes it so you can teleport and live infinitely. Except you can't use this to cheese the boss because the boss will essentially keep respawning unless you are an absolute god gamer. But then again, if you're an absolute god gamer, you wouldn't need this handicap anyway. The same is true of extra lives, with one exception to this, being Lazarus. As when Lazarus dies, he respawns immediately in the room he died in. So in other words, every other instance of bonus lives is not only useless, but pretty detrimental to you. The only real exception to this is the dead cat item. This item gives you 9 lives. Sounds great, right? Well, it sets your heart to 1. That's fine if you don't really have a character that has hearts like Azazel or question mark, which we'll get more into later. Well, actually, as it turns out, this interaction is not how it works. How I originally thought it worked is basically the game would try to give him an extra heart because he has no red hearts, end up giving him an extra soul heart plus the 9 lives benefit, but as it turns out, this is not how it works, and it actually sets his soul hearts to 1. I know, that's a bit confusing, but that is how it works. That, however, is not how it works for any other character, so that's kind of my reasoning for this. Item interactions are very weird and complicated, and sometimes they just make no sense. Also, this is completely unrelated, but I absolutely hate how this character's named, and he is also impossible to look up by his actual official in-game name. Unrelated, but I just had to vent about that. For Eve, who wants to be at 1 health at all times to activate Horror of Babylon to get the speed and damage boost. But for most other characters, this item is pretty detrimental, and if you forget which one is which, congratulations, you've just screwed yourself over. Although it is worth noting, if you get this from a devil deal, which again we'll get more into later, it is technically free if you have exactly 1 heart, and considering it gives you the Guppy transformation, which is a huge bonus, it is well worth it if you do just exactly have only 1 heart to give. Though it's not entirely useless, it's just very niche and very dependent on the character. In other words, it's completely and utterly terribly designed mechanic. Another problem that's kind of really minor but is also kind of annoying, if you get a really good build early on playing the game and you have not unlocked a route to actually let you continue playing the game, you're just going to be disappointed. Like, oh, I got this insane build, I can't wait to beat the next boss. Oh, what's that? I haven't unlocked the next boss yet, so I just have to play another run? Well, shit, I had an overpowered run. I wanted to fight the next boss. However, there is one particular way to do this, and you'll need the shovel item. The shovel item lets you go to the next room down, and this includes the room that Mr. Satan is in. So you can technically access this room before you're even allowed to, normally, but considering how bad the item is normally, it's pretty much not worth it, and if you carried it this far, there's a good chance your build is not great. But this video's going on for a little bit. That means it's time for a brief intermission. So cue intermission time. Oh hi, it's intermission time. You know what that means, though actually I still don't. So instead, use this time to pause the video and go get a snack, use the toilet, or do whatever you want. Or just go make dinner if you haven't eaten dinner yet. And remember to stay hydrated as well. But since we're here, it's also my 1-year anniversary, technically, from starting this channel. Kind of crazy to think about I've been doing this for a whole year, but it's been a fun hobby. And thank you to all the new viewers and those who have stuck around for a while. Your support means a lot, but is ultimately not necessary. Just enjoying the video is enough. Anyways, that's the end of intermission time. We now return to the regularly scheduled programming. Up until this point, I've been rather negative on the game, but that's just because I genuinely do enjoy the game, and sometimes it can be rather frustrating. But that said, let's talk about some of the positives of Isaac. That being the gameplay variety via its characters. Unless, of course, you like to play The Lost, which I actually don't even have unlocked yet because vanilla unlocking The Lost is insanely complicated, and even the wiki just says it's complicated. But even still, there's probably a character you're going to enjoy, but even then you have to unlock a lot of them. But even then, a lot of the characters do add variety, and the fact that you do have to complete certain achievements with the characters does kind of force you into that variety, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, but personally, I do enjoy it ultimately, even though it can be kind of annoying. Probably one of my personal favorites is Isaac after you actually unlock his D6 item. It's not easy to do, but it's very worth it in the end, because Isaac can reroll items for you. Suddenly those crappy active items can turn into mediocre passive items. Yay! But as I also mentioned earlier, there's also Eve, which has Horror of Babylon, which gives you a bonus damage and bonus speed if you're at exactly 1 heart. And it's even a reference to one of the best games ever made, Castlevania 2. Oh, what a horrible night to have a curse indeed. At least Bloody Tears is a banger though. Which is actually kind of another thing, I do actually enjoy a lot of the funny little humor Isaac has. One of my personal favorites is if you poke at the fortune-telling machine too much, it will basically just tell you to stop and go do something else. Which is absolutely hilarious, and I actually just found that out. And sometimes your runs can literally be completely insane on accident. In fact, many of my fights with the lamb were actually complete accidents, as I was just trying to get footage and, you know, I did not have the item unlocked I needed for said character, so might as well. And then I ended up having a really silly run. Isaac can sometimes be a cosmic kick to the groin or an absolute clown fiesta. And I mean that in the best way possible. When I say Isaac can sometimes have some incredibly stupid moments, but some very fun moments at that, I definitely mean it. I just have to bring up the fact that sometimes the game can be very cruel and unforgiving, and sometimes, yeah, the game can be rather painful. Because, well, sometimes the game is very painful to you, it's sometimes fun just to give the game a middle finger back. Like, for instance, I absolutely hate the Haunt. However, during one of my Demo Man attempts, I found out you can block this stupid idiot with a bomb. And it was just so funny watching him just struggle. Yeah, take that, you unfair boss that's terribly designed. Here's my cheese strategy with a terrible item. Or how I found out homing shots actually do work with Brimstone, and found out the hard way with Envy, with him just basically getting deleted. And oh man, that was just cathartic. My genuine reaction was just, what the hell just happened? Because I was not expecting it to actually work. Although I probably should know this because the adversary, one of my most hated bosses, particularly has this technique. So maybe I should know. But now it's time to talk about Let's Go Gambling. And yeah, there are 3 types of gambling. You have the Blood Bank, which takes it directly from your red heart. And then you have the Skull Game, which basically is pure luck, but you know, sometimes you get a good item from it. And then there's the Slot Machine, because sometimes you can just mindlessly put your money into a slot machine. I don't condone gambling IRL. I think it's a very predatory practice. But gambling in Isaac, I'm like, yeah, let's go gambling. Let's throw all the money in the machine. After all, what else am I going to spend it on? And sometimes these give you really good items, and sometimes it's really fun. The Blood Bank is especially the most generous of all the gambling options because at the very least, you're giving away your heart and they give you a coin. Although sometimes they can give you more coins, and even more coins. And if you put your money in the slot machine, it'll occasionally give you a heart, and thus you can continue the infinite feedback loop of donating blood and then putting money in the slot machine until it blows itself up because it got tired of being infinitely gambled with. But these can also drop occasional items. The slot machine can drop you $1, which unfortunately, due to budget concerns, we can only have 99 cents. And if the blood bank blows itself up, you can occasionally get a portable blood bag, which will give you infinite blood bank uses. If you combine this with the item that lets you gamble anytime, anywhere, you can gamble infinitely! Or at least until RNG screws you over. But also, instead of a portable blood bank, you can occasionally just get a free health item. No, really, this thing has its own unique health item that you can get occasionally if it blows itself up instead of the blood bag. But you'll never get it when you actually want it. Although you could also argue the challenge rooms are also in their own right kind of gambling. Because you can occasionally get good items, sometimes you can just get, oh, I don't know, a bomb or a key or maybe a couple coins from the chests. So that's kind of gambling in its own right, I guess you could argue. But then again, if you have enough patience and enough dedication, anything can be turned into gambling. Alright, enough of the positivity, there's too much of this. Let's talk about the bosses. And many of them are a mixed bag. You have some that are pretty fair, honestly, like Monstro and his many alternative counterparts. which are pretty easy to avoid, pretty much one of the most fair bosses in the game, and one you're never gonna complain about getting. Although one like Dingle is kind of a difficult one early on, because as long as you don't know his pattern, he can be an annoying bastard, but once you figure out his pattern, he's not too bad. Widow is particularly bad, and his alternative is also particularly bad, but that has less to do with the boss's overall design and more to do with the fact the spider enemies came straight from hell just to poke you in the leg. And as I mentioned, there are also some terrible bosses, like the Haunt. I don't like him. He's basically really annoying because you have to kill his little minions first, and then you have to fight him, and he is the earliest boss in the game to have a brimstone laser attack. So yeah, he's pretty dangerous. And don't you even think about juking him, because he's gonna just completely sideswipe you. The adversary is also kind of an annoying boss just because of his bullshit laser attack, because it tracks you. Because yes, homing brimstone is insanely broken, and it's even more annoying when it's used on an enemy! Other than that, his attacks are completely fine apart from the bullshit tracking brimstone laser! But there's also bosses like Fatty, because he's just annoying and fat. And then there's just whatever the bloat and the peep was designed for. Because I hope whoever designed this boss stubs their toe about 5 billion times.
Oh, so when I wish bodily harm on people, I'm apparently evil. Yet when you do it, it's perfectly fine. I see how you are, you hypocritical meatbag.
Well, in all fairness, I don't normally wish harm on people. However, this boss is a particularly different story, because he's just pure ass to fight no matter what. Remember what I said about the mind-controlling tiers of the item I still don't know how to pronounce? And how that was a terrible item because you had another thing to worry about on top of enemy placement? Well, that's basically the boss in a nutshell, with his little eyeball thingies. And the bloat, his harder counterpart, is even worse somehow because he has brimstone lasers that can hit you from the side and from the front and back. Absolute cancer to fight. But also, while there's bosses, there's mini-bosses in the form of the 7 deadly sins. And they're painfully mediocre, and I generally don't really care about them that much. They also have super variants, which are kind of better, and they sometimes drop better items. Kind of just the main problem with the 7 deadly sins is their items are just painfully mediocre. I like Rast's design because it's basically just a game of Bomberman, which that's awesome, but problem is, oftentimes his AI is so dumb he ends up blowing himself up. But probably the absolute ass of a boss design is Greed. Because not only does his little minions steal your money, your hard-earned money that you can not get back, by the way, because once you take damage from them, they permanently take away a coin from you. Greed is especially a particular kind of asshole, because he can spawn in not just regular rooms that the 7 deadly sins would spawn in, but he can also spawn in secret rooms, which I'll get into in a little bit. But wait, there's more! He can also spawn in shops! So imagine for a second, you have gotten a ton of money, and you're like, oh man, I cannot wait to get to the donation machine, go check out the shop, even if the items suck, I just want to spend this money. And then lo and behold, Greed shows up as like, hello, how you doing? I'm gonna take all your money. The amount of times that has happened to me is absolutely insane. So as a whole, I have a personal vendetta against Greed.
But doesn't he have the best drop, though, of the Steam sale, which gives all items 50% off for the rest of the run?
Well, yes, that's awesome when he does drop it. Except here's the thing, he doesn't always drop it, and the fact that he can steal from a shop basically just completely invalidates that.
What a shame.
God, I fucking hate this boss design. And as a whole, can I just say when Greed randomly shows up in the later stages and he gives you the Steam sale right at the end where there are absolutely no shops is just the biggest middle finger you can actually get. Unless, of course, you're Isaac. In that case, you can just reroll the item and then it's all great and grand. But while we're talking about shops, let's talk about the secret shops of the devil and angel deals. And they're kind of okay a lot of times. In order to get them, you need to clear a bunch of rooms to get to the boss, and then clear the boss without taking damage, and then you have a chance, and I mean a chance, to get a devil or angel room. Alternatively, if you have the goat's head, which you can get via many different ways, the chance is 100% regardless of if you took damage or not. But you can also bomb the shopkeepers and various secret room keepers, and you'll get a slight bonus. Again, this is never explained.
Shall I keep a tally of the game never explaining things?
Oh no, you're going to need a lot of tallies, and I think we would run out of tallies after a certain point. But you cannot get angel deals if you accept a devil deal. Then again, sometimes the devil deals are just straight up not worth it, because they cost health. And sometimes you're like, no, I'm good, thank you. And other times he can screw you over, because sometimes he doesn't have an item, he instead has a red chest. And red chests are gambling, because sometimes they can just teleport you, spawn enemies, or, oh, I don't know, spawn a giant troll bomb which you have absolutely no control over whatsoever and is slowly creeping towards you, looking to explode in your face. Wow, thanks, Sataniel. I'm going to kick your ass. And angel deals can sometimes feel just as bad, but you do need to get them in order to fight the secret mega boss, Mega Satan. In order to do this, you're going to need to blow up the angel statues and then fight the angel boss. It's also worth noting that if you have multiples of the key item they drop, you can actually re-roll this as Isaac and actually get a random angel deal item. Just a little tidbit. And it's here I tell you about the epic run I had where I ended up beating the question mark boss, ended up getting bored and deciding to beat Mega Satan anyway. Is what I would say if my footage wasn't ruined by a stupid curse. Because that's another thing. Curses kinda suck. Oh, what a horrible night to have a curse indeed, because I can't see anything, and it ruins my footage. And the footage you're seeing now has probably been brightened up a little bit just so you can see, because I know YouTube kind of compresses things a little bit. But most of the curses are just kind of straight up unfun. There's Curse of the Lost, Curse of the Blind, Curse of the Unknown, and my personal least favorite, Curse of Darkness. Because remember how I said spider enemies can be completely and utterly painful because they just sneak up on you and they have very weird AI on top of that? Well, imagine a bunch of spider enemies with the Curse of Darkness, and then you get pain. I don't like them. But anyway, this is a lot of negativity. I'm gonna talk about something fun, that being the secret rooms and how they're actually pretty well designed. There is a method to the madness. These can only spawn in between other rooms, and sometimes they can not spawn in between rooms and sometimes be in a weird odd position, but you're never gonna figure that out. Most of the time it's safe to assume they're in between other rooms. And they sometimes can give you some extra bonus items, and sometimes they can be completely useless. But the other gambling-based aspect that can sometimes be rather funny because it can sometimes be run-winning is various other items that can spawn. Rocks, mushrooms, even these skulls can even give you items, pills, and various other things. If you see some weirdly colored rocks, bomb them. Those are tinted rocks. They can sometimes give you good items. I say all this because despite Isaac having a ton of problems, it can have some of the most insane fun you'll ever have, and honestly, I highly recommend it. Under the condition that you know what you're getting into. If there is one thing I would recommend, it's the item description mod. No, seriously, you kinda need this mod. Trust me, you'll need it. And if you're picking up the DLC, buy it in a bundle because, go figure, even the DLC is confusing. But to answer the question, is the Binding of Isaac Rebirth still worth it in the year 2025 and beyond? The short answer is yes, but I sure hope you're willing to open up a wiki page a lot of times or install a few mods to really improve the quality. But as a whole, you're definitely going to get your money's worth in your enjoyment, although honestly, Isaac can be a bit pricey, so I recommend picking it up at a Steam sale, like, oh, I don't know, everything else, but still, if you're interested, pick up the game on sale and get its DLCs while you're at it. But by the way, Mimi, what the hell are you complaining about soy for? You know that the whole meme thing is not real, right? Soy is not that bad.
Oh, I'm aware. I've just invested in several soy companies to help my inevitable takeover of the world. All part of my master plan.
Okay, you go do that and go recharge, okay? You funny little AI robot thingy that I keep around because you're good content. But anyways, that's all for now! And if you enjoyed this video, well, honestly, thank you. And if you made it this far, thank you again. If you didn't enjoy this video, well, at least you made it this far and I can thank you for that. And happy 1 year anniversary / Halloween / whenever you're watching this, because hopefully I'll have this done by Halloween. But either way, I'll see you all next time. If there is a next time, truly, because I have been busy and it's really hard to make videos like this, but I still enjoy it regardless. Anyways, I'll see you all next time, and goodbye.